This video was originally published on Horses.land. Because of content restrictions, this sort of work generally cannot be published on YouTube. For the uncensored ad-free version of this video and other work which is not permitted on YouTube, check out Horses.land. New merch is also now available. Thanks to Ground News for sponsoring this video. The restaurant was the sort of expensive one where old men courted prostitutes and they drank champagne without looking at the prices on the menu. I worked in the kitchen and it was a heavy place. Everything was made of metal. The employees drank vodka and sniffed Benzedrine in the bathroom. The summer in Carolina was very hot and very humid. Some nights, kitchen workers who stayed late and were scheduled to work early slept on bags of flour in the storage area because it was cold or they were drunk. The world had arranged its pieces as it desired, so we lived and we worked without much forward momentum. Demanding jobs like this one ask for 60 or 70 hours of your life each week. These jobs take over your physical life and they too dig claws into your soul. They change the way you converse with life, and all things are realigned into the context of work. The most mean part is that these jobs do not usually provide much in return. At the time in my employment, I gained $8 per hour and some pains in my body. But one of the things these jobs do give is people. These jobs thrust people into your life. They are people who would otherwise be so distant and anonymous that they would have never even reached the distinction of being called strangers. In these jobs, these people are more than just acquaintances or coworkers. You spend most of your waking life with them, and you get to know them pretty good, whether you like it or not. For me, two of these people were Jimmy Jackson and Bohr Edwards. By the end of this story, Bohr will be dead. The U.S. military has attacked 3 more boats in the Eastern Pacific, killing 8 people. This is a pretty loaded headline, and when I look at it on Ground News, I can understand more about the story than the headline itself. Coverage is relatively balanced between left, right, and center-leaning outlets, but we can see distinct differences in how the left and right frame this story. At a glance, we can see over 250 sources covering the story. Right-leaning outlets consistently include the White House's line that these boats belong to drug smugglers and that the operation was part of an ongoing war against narcotics trafficking. Those on the left seem less convinced, highlighting the controversial nature of these strikes and their mounting death tolls. We have a president who plays pretty fast and loose with the facts, and a media apparatus that tends to do the same. In these strange circumstances, Ground News can help us turn confusion into clarity. Viewers of this channel may have noticed a pattern this year. Ground News has been my only sponsor. That's because I'm not interested in promoting some plastic gadget of the month or the latest attention-sucking mobile game. I genuinely believe in the work that the team at Ground News is doing, and I believe more people should be using the service. Unlike other platforms, they don't push or suppress stories to influence your perception of the world. Their platform prioritizes giving readers full transparency on today's issues by pulling in the world's perspective on them, providing sources, history of failing fact checks, and even who's benefiting from you believing their version of the story. When it comes to news, finding the truth is getting more difficult every day. I sincerely believe Ground News can help us right the ship on this whole issue. Ground News is fully independent and supported by readers like us, but I partnered with them to get my viewers 40% off the same Vantage plan I've been using. Consider Ground News for yourself or as a gift this holiday season. Go to ground.news/horses, click the link in my description or scan my QR code to get unlimited access for $5 per month. By signing up, you're directly supporting the work I do here and your ability to think critically. Each morning, a man named Rusty dropped off a box of lobsters at the restaurant. They were alive, moving and fighting, but they had rubber bands around their claws, so no matter how hard they tried, they could not brawl in earnest. They could have climbed out of their crate if they had their claws unbanded, but the lobster company and Rusty made sure that wouldn't happen. I often looked at these boxes of lobsters, and I watched them fighting each other with their banded claws in their crowded box. I don't know if they were made mean by God, but they were in a box, so they were mean. My job was to boil lobsters and then break the meat out of their bodies. I put the lobsters into a large plastic tub and covered them with small, cracked pieces of ice. As soon as the ice hit the lobsters, the animals stopped moving. The cold shocked them into stillness. Cold and unmoving, they were easy to dump into a big pot of boiling water with lemon, salt, white wine, and Old Bay seasoning. I never thought all that stuff in the water changed the way the lobsters tasted. I wondered how could such delicate things penetrate through the lobster's shells. It seemed against logic and most rules of cooking which I knew. But I put the lemon, salt, white wine, and Old Bay into the pot because that was what the recipe said, and following that recipe, I could go home every week with $300. Before Boar, my coworker was a man named Tucker, who was from Utah, and he was young. Late at night, Tucker stole cars, broke them down into parts, and sold those parts individually. Tucker also made gin in his apartment, which he sold to the rest of us very cheaply. Neither his cars nor his gin were hugely profitable endeavors, and that was why Tucker cut lobsters. Tucker rode a bright green Kawasaki motorcycle. One night he was high, and he wrapped his Kawasaki motorcycle around a tree. He did not show up to work again at the restaurant. The restaurant needed someone to take his spot immediately. The most talented man I worked with was named Vladimir, and Vladimir was addicted to heroin. We never used that word, heroin. It somehow felt too morbid on the tongue. It tasted bad. We called heroin many other names: diesel, hard, gasoline, medicine, or dog food. The thing about heroin is that it does not forever bring a high. The first or second or third use heroin brings a euphoria, but eventually, and with its repeated use, the heroin becomes like air, and a man needs it to survive at all. Then, even with the substance in his veins, this sort of heroin addict never appears high because the drug only returns him to a baseline of functioning. This man with his heroin, he will appear as full of life and vibrancy as a man who has never touched the drug. Without it, though, he will suffocate in withdrawal. On more than one occasion, the chef Vladimir ran out of heroin. When this happened, Vladimir leaned on his cutting board with his head in his arms. He did not talk, nor did he listen. He became the closest to a dead man I had ever seen. The talented chef was suddenly useless to the enterprise without his dog food. Cutting lobsters was the type of thing a person could learn just by doing, even with no experience at all. So the restaurant hired Vladimir's heroin dealer to cut lobsters, but less stated to keep Vladimir supplied with his medicine. That heroin dealer was Boar Edwards. With Boar around, the talented chef did not run out of heroin, and there was now someone to replace Tucker. Boar was Haitian. He was under 6 feet tall, and he was about 40 years old. His head was shaved, and he had a beard. The weather on his eyes and the rasp in his voice made him seem much older than he was. He had a gold front tooth and many gold fillings in the back of his mouth, which shined when he spoke. Given 1,000 chances, I would not call Boar Edwards a good man, but he was straightforward in every way a person can be. He said things that he meant, and he did them with intention, and almost never the opposite. For that rare quality, he was a lot closer to goodness than most people I knew at the time, and many people I've met since. In those days, I could not really fall asleep sober. One summer night, I told Boar I had run out of marijuana and needed to buy more. Boar had some bad weed at his house, and he was willing to give it to me for free if I gave him a ride home. So after work, we got in my Toyota, and I drove Boar to his place. Boar's home was an apartment, and it was part of a larger, government-funded complex. It was a dense neighborhood of white square buildings with dozens of apartments in each one, and it was tucked away far from the city, as these places usually are. There he lived with his wife and their 6-year-old daughter. We got in his house, and it was very hot. Bohr explained to me that there was no law which required government-built housing units to have air conditioning. Without air conditioning, the homes were cheaper to make, and so the government could build more of them more quickly. I usually saw many homeless people on the streets of the city, so I did not think this plan was working very well or earnestly. Bohr told me all of the tenants bought their own window-mounted air conditioning units from second-hand stores, and so they often malfunctioned. Days earlier, Bohr's had broken, and so now he did not have one at all. Bohr grabbed a bag of weed. "Can you help me with something?" Bohr asked me. By this time I would have called us friends, so I replied, maybe. What is it? "They are sleeping. I don't want to wake them up, you know. I just need to use your kitchen. You got a kitchen and a pot?" "I've got a kitchen and a pot." "Oh, and baking soda. You got baking soda?" "In my fridge, but it's old. It was there when I moved in." "That don't matter. That's fine." We went back to my apartment where I lived alone. It was small and old, but it had a kitchen, a pot, and a box of baking soda. I gave Bohr the pot and the baking soda. He put the pot on the stove and the baking soda in the pot. He produced from his pocket a bag of cocaine and poured some into the pot. I knew what he was doing abstractly, in the way I knew what surgery or demolition looked like. But I asked him anyways what he was doing, probably just in the interest of good conversation. It was a strange thing to watch a man cook cocaine into crack, and it would have been more strange to watch in silence. "Well, I don't have the money to just sell cocaine, and I don't know anyone who has the money to buy it either. So I buy the coke, mix it with the baking soda, then I get the crack. I don't know if I want to be doing this around my daughter, you know. Her mother says she doesn't want me doing it at all." Bohr talked like a locomotive. When he got going, he went. "I'm thinking, bitch, you think I want to be doing this shit? You think I want to be over here cooking crack and selling it to those ghouls outside? That's what I call them. I call them ghouls. Hell, I don't want to be cooking those lobsters. I don't want to be selling diesel. I don't want to be doing any of this shit, man. But I have to feed our girl. I have to get her clothes. I have to get myself clothes. I have to pay rent and I have to pay the electric bills and all that shit. Shit, if it was up to me, I wouldn't be doing a damn thing at all." I knew that I shouldn't let someone cook crack in my apartment, but I was too polite and passive to stop it. In the years that followed, I have wondered if being passive around wickedness is itself a wicked thing to do, but at the time we all made habits out of these sorts of deeds. I picked fights, and I thieved things, and I deceived people for no broad-reaching moral battle that I can think of today. Bohr's need to provide for his family was far more legitimate of a reasoning than I had for any of my badness. Some of this meant I was far from being able to cast judgment, and I didn't really care enough to do so anyways. We were all foul, and we did not know much, but we knew better than to masquerade as anything else. I know, I'm a father. This ain't right, man. This ain't what a father is supposed to be doing at 1:30 on a Friday night. Damn, that's dark, man. I'm sorry. Coming over, using your shit, and fucking your whole vibe up. Look at me. I'm sorry, Mike. So I asked Bohr, out of only curiosity, if he knew his parents. "Well, my mom's up in heaven. Maybe. Shit. And my dad, well, you don't mind. I mean, you asked, and I don't, you know this was a long time ago, so I don't think about it too much anymore." Bohr looked down at the pot. He asked me for some tinfoil, and I gave it to him, and he poured the product onto the foil. It bubbled and then settled into a white paste which would harden more when it cooled completely. Bohr told me that his dad had been a drug dealer. When Bohr was 12 years old, he got home from school and walked into his house, and he saw his dad on the floor, leaned up against a wall, holding his Remington brand break-action shotgun. His father's face was a hole, and small fragments of bone, and his teeth were glued with an explosion of blood onto the pink curtains behind where his body sat. That was what Bohr told me. Bohr was an honest man, and that was the last time I saw him. The fire wasn't on the news. Like most things which only affect the poor, the fire wasn't worth being on the news. But in a little town like that one was at the time, current events have their own way of crawling through the population. About a week later, I learned that all of those air conditioners plugged in at Bohr's complex overloaded a circuit and caused an electrical fire. The fire burned down a large part of the project housing, including Bohr's apartment, which in fact did not even have an air conditioner in it. That struck me as mighty mean. After the fire, police found all of Bohr's contraband. I assumed dog food, mostly. Child Services took his daughter. Bohr got put in jail and his wife left him. When he found out his daughter and wife were gone, he tied one end of his jumpsuit to the top bunk bed in his jail cell and tied the other around his neck, and he stood on the concrete ground and he leaned forward until the jumpsuit strangled every piece of life from his body. The world arranges its pieces at random, and some are given tools while others are given weapons. Bohr was handed a grenade as he entered the world, and it took him 40 years to pull the pin, but I suppose he did pull the pin himself. His tragedy was a unique sort of sadness, assembled by his place in the world, and then carried out by his own deeds. There are demons who do not need to hide, for whom all the world is a castle. These people look the same from every angle and at every depth, and I think Jimmy Jackson was one of those people precisely. He didn't own the restaurant I worked at, but his father did, and for Jimmy, that meant he owned the restaurant in a unique way, not captured by names on business licenses. Jimmy had bright red hair and pale skin and an underbite. He wore the stupid dress code of those men born into wealth who saw their wealth as an innate atmospheric condition of the world rather than any sort of remarkable advantage. His suits were expensive and they hung poorly with excess fabric on his body. His black leather shoes gleamed brightly with the labor of a shoe shiner's daily efforts. Jimmy Jackson was probably 35 or 40, but he was really a child. Being a child and an adult all at once can be a very good thing. Many qualities of children, those like wonder, ambition, and curiosity, are sad to see disappear in adulthood. There exist other childlike qualities which are more selfish and infantile, and these should be driven out when the time is right. However, this does not always happen, and as was the case with Jimmy, an adult can become the most unpleasant version of a child. No one had any patience for Jimmy, but we all had to pretend that we did. Jimmy didn't have an ounce of power, so we'd all listen to him with a passiveness which he was too dense to detect. We knew he'd have fired us, given the chance and the capacity, but Jimmy lacked both. His father wouldn't let him fire anyone, and Jimmy anyways could have never figured out how to do something so laborious as terminating an employee. I should not really malign Jimmy Jackson so severely, though, because the most accurate assessment I can give of the man is that he was boring. Talking to Jimmy felt like walking through a museum that was full of copies of the same ugly painting. That painting was ugly, but it was more than ugly. It was tiresome, and it was boring. Jimmy had ascended beyond being mundanely terrible and had become tremendously boring. One day after Bohr was gone, Jimmy came into the kitchen. "Where's your friend?" Jimmy asked me. "My friend?" I replied. "Yeah, you know, the dark fella who's always back here doing the lobsters and the fryers with you." "Oh, you mean Bohr?" "I don't know." "Yeah. He's gone." "Quit?" "No. You didn't hear? He's dead. In that fire." "Oh." There was a pause that was very long, and then Jimmy spoke. "Well, can you do all the lobsters yourself?" I recognized a road I didn't really want to go down, so I just replied, "Yeah, it'll be fine." Next door, attached to the restaurant I worked at, there was another building. Years ago it had been a French restaurant, but now it was only an empty building with cloudy windows and dirty floors. Once there had been a dead dog in the building, which animal control had come and removed only after 2 days of the smell wafting next door. We never found out how the dog got in there or when it had died. Instead, we just accepted that the universe had somehow and at some time just sort of placed it there. We, the employees of the still thriving restaurant, had co-opted the disused back patio of the old French place as our own. One morning I went outside, and behind the French restaurant, a cook named Otis was there. Otis liked a brand of plug tobacco called Red Man. He used a small and dirty pocket knife to slice a cube of tobacco from a paper bag and pushed it into his mouth. I did the same, and the tobacco began its gentle burn against my gums. Otis had a young face and a full hairline, but he was old, and his eyes were old, with dark bags. I will never forget Otis because of the way he looked. He was like a summer which had skipped the beauty of fall and the celebration of Christmas, and had run right into a cold, dark January. I said that Jimmy didn't know about the fire or about Bohr, and Otis was unsurprised. "Jimmy doesn't think about us," he said. There was a long pause. He doesn't have to, you know. I know that Otis and I had a much longer conversation on that day, but I dwelled on this idea alone, and I still do. "Thanks for the plug," I said to Otis, and I spat brown tobacco juice onto the concrete ground. Then I went inside and watched the lobsters fighting in their box.